Bom dia. My name is Anna and I talk to you from Ukraine, the country torn by war, but we will definitely win for the sake of democracy and everything normal in this world. I am very honored to address the participants of the EUbyLakes project's EU for Citizens program. And today I want to tell you a little bit more about my beautiful country, Ukraine, and the difficult times we are going through, but the road that we have chosen will definitely lead us to a better future in a globalized world. For a very long period of time, Ukraine was hidden behind the Iron Curtain and occupied by the Soviet Union. For the last 30 years, we were building our independence, but on the 24th of February, a full-scale war, an invasion of Russia, changed our lives forever. Many people started looking and reading more about what is Ukraine, discovering our history, culture, geography, and I am really happy to introduce you to some interesting facts I would like you to associate with my country. Well, first of all, and it may sound a little bit surprising, Ukraine is the largest country in Europe. We have a long and interesting history and beautiful nature. We have two seas, mountains and deserts, and I speak to you from the Lake District of Ukraine. We have more than 200 beautiful lakes in my region Volyn, where I live and work today. I am happy to live in a semi-dangerous zone where we don't have Russian troops on tanks, but from time to time we have missile attacks and have to be careful. But this semi-dangerous zone allows me to vlog about my country on YouTube as Anna from Ukraine and allows me to record this lecture for you. So, coming back to Ukrainian history, I want to introduce you to Kyiv Rus, which is a very famous and a very strong medieval state that had lots of connections with other European countries. Our princes and princesses belong to various European monarch families, and we actively participated in the European life. For example, my native town Lutsk, which is the center of Volyn region, in 1429 hosted a meeting of European monarchs who were invited here by the Lithuanian Duke Vytautas. And very often we joke that Lutsk was the first capital of EU summits because it all resembled modern European meetings, modern European summits, because European monarchs gathered here to discuss the security and future of the medieval Europe. Also, I believe many of you have heard about Ukrainian Cossacks. And this is a word that we often use to describe people who are strong and brave and want to be free. Cossacks, who lived on siege, a specific military organization, is an example of a unique and extremely democratic state that existed for a couple of centuries and surprised the world with its freedom. And, for example, the rulers of Cossacks were chosen by elections, something unbelievable for the 17th century, let's say. And Cossacks were also the authors of the first constitution, and some people claim this was the first constitution in the world ever, because it was finalized in 1710, and its first original copy is saved today in the Museum of Sweden. Later, for a very long period of time, we were occupied by Russian Empire and then Soviet Union. To tell you the truth, there is no great difference between life under Empire and life in Soviet Union. Many of Ukrainian traditions, cultural practices, bright people were destroyed by the policy of Russification, and today this war continues. But Ukrainians are strong, and with the help of the world, we must win this war and bring back peace and normality to our planet. I would like to thank Portugal and other EU countries that demonstrate their strong support and belief in Ukrainians, and we do understand that our bravery and strength is 100% based on the support of our allies. Portugal is a special country for Ukrainians because there are many of Ukrainians living in your country, and living well, being a part of the community of Portugal. And this demonstrates how important to be united in diversity, to be European citizens, to live peacefully and to exchange the best cultural practices, to learn from each other, starting from important ideological aspects and finishing with the favorite recipes and things like that. For a very long period of time, once again, I will repeat that people did not know much about Ukraine. And this was due to the fact that many countries were either part of Soviet Union, like Ukraine, Belarus, or were very close to the communist regime and belonged to the so-called Eastern Pact of the countries. Thus, they belonged to the sphere of influence of Moscow. I personally hate the idea that something belongs to a sphere of influence of a bigger country. We all know that it is not the size that matters, but the intelligence, the strength of people who live in the country. So perhaps today, with this war in Ukraine and conflicts with many different countries of the world, we realize that it is totally wrong to believe that there are zones of influence or things like that. People and their countries must be free, must be equal, and must strengthen each other, learn from each other. And I guess this is the core of the European Union and its values too, which is important for Ukrainians now. And when asked, what do you know about Ukraine, just a couple of years ago, many people will give negative associations, like, for example, Chernobyl. And to tell you the truth, this is a very tragic period of Ukrainian life and Ukrainian history that damaged our ecology seriously and led to the deaths and diseases of many people. But this is a negative association that we did not like previously, and now we have another negative association with our country, and that is war. Russian war in Ukraine. I never call it Ukrainian war or just war in Ukraine, because we were a safe and peaceful country that did not plan any kind of military actions when we were attacked by the big brother. So today my task is to tell you a little bit more about Ukraine so that you will have different associations, and maybe when it is safe to travel, you will come and discover a lot of interesting places in Ukraine, our beautiful nature, our historical architecture, and very, very tasty food. Though I know it is also very tasty in Portugal. To make this lecture more interactive, before I continue, I want to ask you a question. What associations do you have with Ukraine? Recently, Ukraine was on news and is on news, and we are grateful for the support and attention of the world. But please let me know what associations you have when you hear the word Ukraine. If I could influence you, I would like you to have an association like this is a country that has very strong agricultural sector, for example, or this is a country that built the largest plane in the world, known as Mriya. This plane was very helpful for people all over the world. For example, during COVID pandemics, it carried medicines to distant places on Earth, and it could carry huge masses of medication, saving time and saving humans' lives. This plane was destroyed by a Russian attack at the very beginning of war, and it was very symbolic because the Ukrainian name of the plane, Mriya, can be translated as dream. But we will definitely rebuild the plane. We want to be useful to the world, and nothing will stop us. Another thing that I would like you, for example, to think about Ukraine in that way is a very famous song, The Carol of the Bells, that many of us like listening during beautiful winter days, waiting for Christmas presents and hot cocoa. It was written by a Ukrainian composer, Mykola Leontovich, and it is based on an old Ukrainian national song. There are many other things that I'm sure you can learn about my country. And I hope that after this war, Ukraine will become a part of the European Union, bringing our experience and our knowledge, learning from you, from your cultures and your experiences, and thus making this world a better and a more peaceful place. The period of the Soviet Union, I was actually born at the very end of the Soviet Union, and I cannot tell you that I remember much, because I was a little child back then. But I do remember really long queues. I remember it was difficult to buy some ordinary products, and if you could get bread, butter, potatoes, or bananas were magical. It was pretty difficult to find them, and they were a very good New Year present, for example. So it was very difficult, but at the same time, what I remember much better is the period of Ukrainian independence. That was the time when I went to school, and my parents, people around, they were very much inspired by the new independence that Ukraine gained in 1991. That was a period when people returned back to their cultural practices, Ukrainian language was heard more and more, and our awful memories of the Soviet Union started to disappear. Actually, Soviet Union, that was on the territory of my country for more than 70 years, was a very gloomy and dark period. And according to official statistics, we lost more than 16 million people of Ukrainian population during that period. Especially difficult and bloody were the 30s. And Holodomor, deportations, Stalin's terror, who was a dictator of the USSR, led to the change of Ukrainian cultural identity and to lots of traumas that we still have to go through. But the 90s were the period of optimism, and many of us, many of our families, our parents, grandparents started building businesses, getting back private properties, developing plans, learning foreign languages, opening the borders, because back in the USSR times, it was almost impossible to travel. You could only travel to the countries that supported communism, socialism, and it was pretty difficult to visit the world. And I guess almost impossible to visit the USA, for example. So in that period, Ukraine was developing, and my country was always focused on businesses, on education, on culture, and we were pretty eager to demilitarize, to give up our weapons. We did not need nuclear weapons that we had at the end of the USSR. We gave it all and started living normally. But Russia decided that it wants to rebuild its empire, and to tell you the truth, it is always bad to have a neighbor like that. A neighbor that disrespects, that does not care about your language, about your culture, and wants to persuade you that you are just a part of their country. This is a very dangerous tendency that became pretty obvious in the middle of 2000s when President Putin came to rule in Russia. And he said that the fall of the USSR was the greatest catastrophe, geopolitical catastrophe, and started rebuilding this union. During the period of his rule, and that is 22 years, I am sure you will agree that no leader must stay at power for 22 years. Well, maybe when he or she is a king or a queen, that's okay, because they don't rule, they just reign, they symbolize the country. But when we speak about presidents or prime ministers that are elected, even a best person that stays at power for 22 years or more becomes poisoned by this feeling of power. So there were lots of conflicts in Chechnya, in Georgia, and in Ukraine. For Ukraine, the problem started in 2014 after Maidan revolution, when Ukrainians demonstrated they want to move in the direction of the European Union. Why? I can tell you that for me, the associations that I have with the European Union are freedom, democracy, right to say what you want, equality between different cultures and languages, women, men, and all the other possible identities that you have. the understanding that mutual support leads to mutual success, the ability to travel, the ability to learn and live where you want. So somehow I feel that this identity, European identity, was always a part of Ukrainians. Back in the medieval times, when we had Kiev Rus country that had connections all over Europe and influenced many of the European political and economical practices. It was present in Cossack state when Cossacks participated in different military actions all over Europe, protecting, for example, France. And it was present at the beginning of the 20th century when Ukraine proclaimed its independence and had lots of diplomatic contacts with other European countries. We love being open, we are very hospitable people, we like communication, cultural exchange, we don't like living hidden behind the Iron Curtain, we don't see West and all the rest as our enemies, so that was a totally natural desire to join the European Union that we wanted to fix in Ukrainian legislation back in 2013 and 2014. But pro-Russian President Yanukovych decided he wants something different and said no. So people went out to protest, and I think protesting, demonstrating your opinion, influencing your politicians is something normal, natural, and even healthy that people in the European Union, in the United States, and other democratic countries practice very often. We don't worship our politicians, we ask them to do what we want because they serve the people. But during this period of exchange of power, when pro-Russian President Yanukovych escaped the country, Russia decided to attack and annex Ukrainian Crimea in 2014. And I don't want to be pessimistic, but the world was more tolerant to Russia at that period, and to some extent, it perhaps led to Putin's growth of power, ambitions, and anger. I think I would like to continue this lecture with another question. Do you think that, did you believe that war is possible in the center of Europe in the 21st century? Your country is lucky, as many other countries are lucky, to forget the experiences of wars. And I was just like you. It was normal for me to remember and think about the victims and heroism of the Second World War. We commemorated our soldiers, we were proud of the victory over Nazism, but it was all really far away in the past. And just before this war, even though all the newspapers, intelligence services, and other people were warning us, can be dangerous, war can start, we did not believe. I personally did not believe it is possible because, why? There is no need. And when it all began, early in the morning on the 24th of February, we were all terrified, but at the same time, we felt that we are strong and united. The very first days were very decisive because Russia is a strong country. Russia is the biggest country in the world. Russia is the country that has nuclear potential. And for a long period of time, it created an image of the invincible army, and it was claimed that the Russian army is the second army in the world. Now we have this joke that, no, Russian army is not the second army in the world. Russian army is the second army in Ukraine, after the Ukrainian armed forces. But once again, I will repeat this, very first days, they were very decisive, because we did not have enough weapons. We did not know how to react when your houses are hit by missiles, people die in hundreds daily, and you have tanks on your streets, Russian tanks on your streets. Something unbelievable happened, and we were attacked from all the sides of the Russian-Ukrainian, Belarusian border. This was a nightmare. We've learned how to react on air raid alarms. We've downloaded applications that inform us about the dangers of the missile attack. But we also have the sirens working outside because in many hot zones, mobile and internet is not working. We had to adjust to so many things. We have discovered there are lots of bomb shelters in our cities. We've never known about that. We did not need that. And at the same time, we realized that Ukrainians are very much united, and we will not let them destroy us. We will not let them destroy the country, destroy freedom and democracy. And very quickly, we were also surprised and inspired by the support of the European Union and other countries of the world that realized the true face of Russia and the need for the support of Ukraine. And today, as this war continues, no one of us expected it will take so long. And I have started vlogging, and I thought I will record a couple of vlogs, and now I have more than 200 of them telling about the important real-life situations in my country. And at the same time, with this war, many beautiful things happen. And I want to tell you from this epicenter of war that we have to always stay strong and believe in ourselves, because if we manage to go through difficult times, there are good times awaiting for us. Difficult times always discover strong and beautiful people, or strong and beautiful peoples. And all Ukrainians were surprised by the support that the world demonstrated them. And we are very grateful to the people of Portugal and to the people of all other EU countries that demonstrated their support even before the government started acting. And it was a huge wave of inspiration for us all, because we realized we are not alone in this world against a really big enemy. And at the same time, we have started thinking about our future, and our future is definitely connected with freedom, democracy, with environmental protection, with digitalization, with innovation, with mobility, with all these things that are the pillars of the European Union. That's why another good thing that happened for Ukrainian people was the decision of the EU to accept us as a candidate to the European Union. And just before this war, we had like 60% of Ukrainians supporting the idea of joining the EU. And during the war, the percentage grew really quickly and became 91. And I think now it is even higher. Why? Because for us, it is not only about economy. It is not only about visa-free regime. It is not only about your identity, your new EU identity. But it is about a final divorce with Soviet communist past, a final divorce with Russia. And our demonstration that Ukraine always wanted and is a part of the common European cultural heritage sphere, cultural identity, because our core values are just the same as the ones shared by the citizens of the European Union. So when we learned on the 23rd of June that we are already a candidate to the European Union, we were extremely happy and excited. Being a realist, I understand that it is going to be a long road, because it's not simple. First of all, we have to win this war. And I believe we have already won this war on the very first day it started, because this was a gross mistake of Putin to attack a free, loving, independent state, demonstrating his ugly criminal face. But at the same time, there is much work to be done. The country must be rebuilt, and I'm sure we will need much support and experience from our EU partners. And maybe you in future will come to work and learn more about Ukraine, because it will also give you lots of interesting opportunities. And also there are lots of reforms that we have to make to adjust ourselves to the standards of the European Union, to learn some good practices. But at the same time, this candidacy is a very important symbolic gesture. And perhaps it made Putin angry, but it made millions of Ukrainians happy. Those who stayed during war in the country, those who fled to the European Union and received the support as refugees, those who have left Ukraine long before the start of the war. Because the symbolism that we can join the European family is very important during such dark times. And you know, very often when we look more attentively into the structure of the European Union, into the values of the European Union, the standards of living, we realize that there are so many things that we share for decades already. And perhaps when you come to see Ukraine, when it is safe, you realize that we are not that different. And there are many things that we do and value in the same way. And our experience that we received during the war teach us that so many things that the leaders of the European Union talk about are not just important, but super important. And I want to give you this as an illustration. For example, environmental protection, caring about your nature, about your environment, sustainability, neutrality, are the things that we often hear about and we try to apply in our everyday activities and the way we organize, for example, the educational process. But Ukraine is a country that suffered a lot from various ecological problems, and problem number one was Chernobyl catastrophe that happened in 1986. And many people were influenced by it. They had to leave the region that was poisoned by radiation. They had to go through difficult problems with their health. Many people even died. So for Ukrainians, ecology is a very important thing, and we understand it's not something minor. Now, during the war, lots of ecological catastrophes happen here, and it is extremely important to stop Russia before it uses, for example, nuclear weapons. Also, sometimes they threaten our nuclear power stations, and blowing up a nuclear power station is something similar to a nuclear bomb. And they don't care about ecology in general, not only about Ukrainian, but if something really bad happens here, it will influence Russia, European Union. And there are lots of things that they have already destroyed, various industrial objects. There are lots of leftovers after the bombs, after the weapons used. And this vividly demonstrates us how important each element of human cohesion, cohabitation is important when we respect each other, when we care about each other. Because the problem in one side of the world definitely influences the other side of the world. And we have to understand it. And now in Ukraine, we understand it better than ever before. One of the important topics that is often discussed in the European Union and various programs supported, educational, cultural programs, is digitalization. And for me, it was always about innovation, sustainability, learning something new. Like all of us have smartphones, all of us spend much time online, so why not speak about digitization or whatever you call it? And for example, my non-governmental organization also works in the sphere of digitalization of cultural heritage. It's very interesting. It can be used in research, in education, or even in computer games if you prefer such. But now, during war in Ukraine, Russian war in Ukraine, when so many architectural objects are destroyed, they destroy our museums, our churches, various important architectural constructions, we realize that digitization is not just about sustainability, it's not just about innovation. Sometimes it is about survival. and it is a top priority right now. And, many web applications appeared that allow ordinary Ukrainians, without any specific preparation, with the help of their mobile phones, to scan and create 3D images of various architectural objects that they consider important in their locations. Thus, in case of destruction by Russian missiles, for example, it will be possible to recreate these buildings in future. And war very quickly and very clearly explains to us how important digitization can be. And today I want to attract your attention to these facts. I wish you never experience the things we do right now, but don't take for granted all of the things that are present in normal life, because just before the 24th of February, we had a very similar life, and nothing indicated that something really bad can happen to our streets, to our infrastructure, to our buildings, to our families, to our future. So, I am sometimes surprised to see how many people who are smart, who are working in various cultural, educational, political institutions, how they can predict things, tendencies that will be important. And for example, this digitization techniques or environmental protection and environmental neutrality and support of various cultural, linguistic ideas, support of grassroots organization, investment in civil society, all of that is very active for the healthy world, for the healthy European Union, for the healthy country. To summarize our lecture, there are two questions that I would like to ask you, and I will ask them myself too, and will try to answer from the perspective of the Ukrainian citizen that believes to become an EU citizen in a near future. Question number one: why do you think Ukraine needs to become a part of the EU? Well, for me, the answer is obvious. It is extremely important for us to finalize our European future, our democratic future, our freedom from the darkness of communist era, our freedom from dying Russian Empire, to build a really high border with Russia. And even after we win, even after Putin's regime fall, I believe this is real, it is going to be a very long process of the liberation of Russian society, changing their attitude, curing them from the propaganda that was applied on their society for ages. This is not going to be a simple process, and for us, it's extremely important to be a part of the European community, to finally come back to the family of the European peoples where we belonged for centuries. And if you look deeper into the history of your country and into the history of my country, you will see some connections. You will see some old family ties, some old economic connections, and many other examples. Also, it is important for Ukraine to free itself from corruption. Corruption was invented during the fall of the USSR. We may even say it was imported from Russia, and many problems that we had in our politics, in our economy, were closely related to oligarchs that are working or worked with Russia. And in Ukraine, I'm really proud we have a very active civil society. Maybe we have some problems with our politicians from time to time, but our civil society is very active, and from time to time we go on protests, we make revolutions, but we also make our politics healthier, and slowly but very confidently we move in the direction of the European standards, and that comes with important reforms, with transparency. And I'm really proud to say that there are lots of things that we have already changed for the better. Our educational system is nice, our police was reformed, and many other good things are happening. But still, the standards that were developed, designed, and checked in the European Union for decades is something that we need for the fast and effective reconstruction of our country. Many beautiful things like educational mobility or cultural mobility programs, traveling without borders, a possibility to work in different countries, learning different experience, and then maybe coming back to your country, exchanging that experience, is something that we value. A joint defense system. And this is a moment when I don't ask others to protect us, but I believe that after this war, Ukrainians are going to be very experienced and can be useful in the guarding of the global security. You know, my country is a country that is not yet a member of NATO, but we want that. Russians are afraid of that. But there are jokes in Ukraine that at the beginning of this war, Ukraine wanted to join NATO, and at the end of this war, NATO will want to join Ukraine. Of course, this is a joke, but definitely our experience and our desire, our understanding how important peace is, will be useful for the European Union. And here is that I come to the second question that I want to ask you and will answer myself later. Why do you think Ukraine can be useful to the European Union? I think that for a very long period of time, people knew nothing about my country. And it is not the fault of the world, but the fault of the Soviet Union that was hiding us behind the Iron Curtain, and the fault of us. We did not work really hard to make ourselves visible. We always dreamed people to know more about Ukraine, but of course we did not want war to be a reason for that. But today I am proud to be Ukrainian. And believe me, this war of Russia against Ukraine is not just about Ukraine. It is a war of totalitarian, authoritarian regime with the democratic world. And if it is not stopped in Ukraine, it will continue to other countries that Russia believes belong to its zone of influence. We have never wanted to become a battlefield, but now we are. Lots of our houses and lives are destroyed, but we are strong, and we are stronger than we were at the beginning of this war. Putin actually achieved the contrary that he wanted. We became a nation confident in its future, in its choices, and a nation supported by other beautiful nations. We love and feel our allies, and we have no other choice, no other option but to win this war and return this world back to normality. When we don't fear nuclear war, for example, when we can trust each other, we can travel, we can plan winter, we can buy food that we want, or whatever. War is a totally wrong experience that should never exist in the 21st century when people learn so much about each other, know so much about each other. And that is why fighting for freedom, democracy, rights, equality, protecting diversity, this is what we do right now. And to some extent, we demonstrate, European Union, that the values you feel, the values you describe, they are very real. You are happy to live in a country that forgot the experience of war. We are not. But we need each other, and I think we can bring this fresh air. We can explain to those who maybe have forgotten how dangerous this world can be and how important it is to protect these pillars of the European Union. Once again, I want to tell you that Ukrainians are very grateful to the people of Portugal, to the people of the European Union for the support that you demonstrate. And we will win this war together, and I hope the day when it is safe to come and to see our lakes is pretty close. Thank you once again for your support. Obrigada.